Okay, so I guess this could be called more realizations since running away, or I could call it my video addiction 375. Well, the number would definitely have to be higher than that if I was to give it that title. But maybe more so, I was thinking about calling it Why I Regret Running Away as like the main title. But the alternate title could be like, I guess realizations after running away or something like that. Which I've talked about this before. And it's actually another reason why I'm glad that I still like have the abuse evidence videos and even like just different videos from those channels and even other channels that I've had throughout my life talking about different things that are going on, but especially the abuse evidence channels. Because since like running away, looking back at those videos remind me of like how hard I fought to get out here. Not that I've like forgotten really or like have ever thought that I had a place to go back to, but generally, as I even mentioned during the channels, my life like became a repressed memory. Things started to become a repressed memory even years before leaving. And then one of the big things was like going through the cash for kid system and the human cash cow systems. When you're forced on the neurotoxin drugs due to the brain damage and stuff that they cause, they make you not remember anything from the time where you're on the drugs anyhow, which is a good thing for those facilities where people are being abused in there, because once you get out, even if you're still on the drugs, you can't remember anything. So yeah, that's kind of another thing. Anywho, so I want to really get to the point. I know I've talked about the street kids aren't seen as kids things a lot lately, the past months. It's actually really interesting how people go from like, not that this doesn't still happen, but it's really interesting how people will like be like, they'll go between two polar opposites of the whole you're a child, you need to go home to the you're grown thing. Which the child term, I don't really like how that's used anyways, or the bias around it. And realistically, if you're like 10 plus or especially 13 plus, you're really not a quote unquote child. And most people know that they're not a little kid anymore by the time that they're 10 or 12 anyways. So, but that still depends on whether you really have parents or not, which who really does. Most grown people aren't really that safe anyhow, and the family system has been broken. But I feel like I'm even like already going on like an irrelevant rant. So, one, as I mentioned before, I feel like once you get out the abuse situation, whether you run away or you get kicked out or you're like a dumped out foster kid or whatever, depending on like your situation and where you're at least, for me personally, I can say, I feel like I kind of went into more of a regression. I was already developmentally delayed anyhow, for obvious reasons, but I feel like you go into a regression because like you're no longer in a situation where like it's constant torture and like extreme survival mode. Now, of course, depending on where you are when you run away or get kicked out or whatever, and like what your situation is and different things like that, that can be completely different. Like, I mean, when it comes to sexual predatory people, if you go to school, you're going to have to deal with teachers like trying to get with you and stuff. So those are everywhere. And predatory people in general, which you should already know from your abuse situation unless you have cognitive dissonance. Especially if you were in the cash or kid system or the human cash cow systems, because like when you're in that, you're literally like being abused by random people. And generally, even if you're not in those systems and you're the 1% who isn't these days, you still like have all the different bystanders around you and stuff. So you should already know that people are either indifferent to what you have going on or they'll take part in it pretty much. So it shouldn't be a surprise. But what was I saying? I don't know. Pretty much like I feel like you can get a little too calm sometimes once you get out the abuse situation. I feel like you can regress more. And like going back to the thing of me mentioning how like I'm glad that I have the videos still and all that. I just like re-uploaded 2 videos or 3. One I didn't mean to because I had already re-uploaded that before. I did make them unlisted, and I was like, nah, I should keep them public. And so pretty much, I don't remember much from the videos, but I know like in one of them, I mentioned the whole thing with the girl from the 7-day friendship, as I've called her for some years now, which unfortunately I recently stumbled across her Instagram again because I was like going through the emails on one of my old emails, and yeah, so there was that. And that was pretty ironic, to be honest, but anyhow, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so anywho, the girl from the 7-day friendship, this was the girl who was referring to my abuse situation. This was like a little before I ran away, and she was like, your situation's, wait a minute, I don't know if you're the type of person I want in my life, because like your situation is a lot and it stresses me out because I don't know how to help. That may be the thumbnail of this video, but honestly I probably shouldn't even make that the thumbnail. But things like that, okay, no, I don't know what I was about to say with that. Not really. But in that video where I mentioned that girl somewhat to a certain extent, I also said something about how like that's one of the things that made me feel like, okay, once I get out, I'm gonna be making friends. I don't know where I was like getting ideas like that from, or why, or how, but that's just not realistic. Like, nobody wants to be, well, I won't say nobody, that's not true, but people in decent situations don't want to be friends with the abused, neglect, or I guess I could say the severely abused and neglected kid, because I mean, like, especially there, that was in GA. Everybody had been or was being molested at home or by some other random person. So like, I mean, everybody was traumatized. But I guess like, well, not I guess, certain situations definitely people feel like is more than others, especially depending on the person's reaction to it. And it's not like I was like doing a lot of stuff, but like, I mean, to make a long story short, I had the videos and stuff that people knew about, and a lot of people just kind of felt like they were like witnessing my eventual murder, pretty much. It was just a lot of stuff with that. So anywho, point is, um, like, nobody really wants to be friends with, like, I guess I could say the quote unquote severely abused and neglected kid. And once you're out here, it's pretty much the same. I mean, like, I definitely can say there's a 100% difference between people that run away or get kicked out or they have whatever mess with the foster care system, but they actually have somewhere to go, versus the people that go in quote unquote homelessness. It definitely is a complete difference. Even the outcomes are obviously going to be different. And I don't mean couch surfing either. I mean, couch surfing is definitely like different, but that often only lasts so long because, like, as much as people like to throw around the "you burned your bridges" accusations to some people, staying with friends isn't staying with friends, it's staying with your friends' parents. And sometimes when like you have friends that like feel some type of way about your abuse situation and they're saying you can stay with them, they're either talking their parents into it or they're sneaking you into their house, which is going to have its own issues. And typically couch surfing like that just doesn't last that long before the person's parents are like, well, I don't want to take care of somebody else's kid and stuff like that. And so it kind of makes you think back to that one dude that was like, his dad was a pedo and nobody wanted their kids to play with the molested kid. And like I always say, nobody wants the homeless kid or the homeless person around their kids. And I feel like it's kind of similar with the abuse situation. People will be like, well, you're probably going to be like screwed up and traumatized, depending on like how severe they see the situation. but then like once you're out here, it's kind of similar as well. There was something else I wanted to say with that, but generally, I just don't know where I was getting my info from in that video. From I think it was 2023 or 2022, and both are one of the reuploads. But I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it or describe it. But like, that's exactly why I say there needs to be more harm reduction for like runaways and kicked out people. But there also needs to be like harm reduction and support groups where people actually talk about the realities. And it's like, I mean, I've been considered to be a very depressing and negative person since I was like 14, especially, anyways. Especially by mandated reports, whenever I asked for help, they would tell me I'm a quote unquote Debbie Downer, which I guess that was mostly like manipulation, anyhow. So my point is that like I'm not considered to be like the happiest person, so like I didn't have this like happy-go-lucky fairy tale going in my head. Well, not really. Well, okay, maybe I kind of did, because I do always mention that since I was 6, I always had these maladaptive daydreams of me running away right before the tribulation really took off and finding like a Tarzan jungle boyfriend in the woods and all that stuff. But like, what was the other thing with that? Oh yeah, but it's like, once I got out the gaslighting and like I was no longer being gaslit as much as I used to be about like being chronically ill, and I really realized how sick I actually was. That was like when I had just got out here, which I'm better than I was when I first got out here anyways, but I still like really need like testing and treatment and stuff, to be honest, but that's another video. But anywho, once I realized how sick I actually am, I realized that the little bit of things I thought I was going to be able to do, I'm not going to be able to do. Like all that living in trees, climbing tree to tree, like, I mean, and I don't know why I thought that, because like, not well before, but a little before, like, there was a whole, okay, wait a minute. There was a whole thing where I dropped down 80 pounds at 14, which I feel is mostly like losing the metabolic syndrome weight, which is iatrogenic. But as I always say, I got really sick by 15, which I talk about in my How to Know If You Have Mitochondrial Dysfunction playlist. And so, anywho, to make a long story short, by 15, I got to the point where I couldn't lift a book. I couldn't balance on one foot. I wasn't even strong enough to push a chair under a desk. And I'm still like sick and stuff anyhow. Not like that bad anymore, but some of that was also low blood sugar, and I didn't know I had hypoglycemia either because of like all the gaslighting. But anywho, like I realized that I wasn't gonna be able to do this like hunting off grid, building a hut in the woods. I mean, if I'm really gonna have to do it, I mean I'm gonna have to figure out how to do it anyways. But like even before escaping, I wasn't really sure about how much longer I would be alive, because even with the gaslighting, like I could tell that I definitely have like some serious health issues going on, and the abuse situation didn't help with that. But it's like, I don't know, if push comes to shove, I'll have to do it. But generally, like the things that I thought I would be able to do and I was telling myself I'd be able to do before running, I'm really just not able to do, because I literally just like, I'm too sick for all that. And I've been too sick like for a really long time. But like I said, that's kind of another video. But that's just like one thing where I can admit that I kind of did have like a little bit too much happy-go-lucky, magical thinking now that the daydreams going on in my head. And then or was that the set 3? I don't even know what number I'm on, but I guess I could say 3. So the third thing is it kind of goes into how like when you're in the abuse situation, you have to like be this hero for your, well, I don't know, I can't even say that, because I've even been in like somewhat recent situations where I've been like somebody's unpaid emotional therapist, especially with the whole situation with that lady that said she was going to adopt me, that I knew I shouldn't have ever talked to in the first place, but I did. I don't regret it. I mean, it's not like she's like a evil person or something, but like she just was never nice to me, never really liked me, and still obviously doesn't really like me. So I don't know. But yeah, so I can't really just say in the abuse situation, but generally more so in the abuse situation sometimes. you're like everybody's unpaid emotional therapist. You're like doing all this people pleasing, all this CPTSD stuff. You may be a codependent, some people more than others. You're and definitely like, well, nah, the limits of sessions is irrelevant. So generally you're just like being this parentified, adultified person. And it doesn't stop once you get out here, but I just feel like, for me personally at least, it felt like it was just like worse in my abuse situation. Like I know I was watching this Patrick Teehan video like some months ago, and he was talking about how like when you're especially like before you're double digits, when you're like really young, I guess, like 8 years old and stuff like that, you like think that everybody else is just like being a baby, or everybody else is just like babyfied. This can depend on what demographic you grow up in, though, to be honest. But you feel like everybody else is babyfied, and you'll be like, oh, I watch rated R movies and stuff, but they're like watching Sesame Street or something like that. It's like it goes into the thing that I say there's no such thing as a quote unquote child for a lot of reasons, especially because the term is very biased, revolving around who's in what situation, who has parents and who doesn't, what their ethnicity is, what their skin color is, whether they're homeless or not. Because I always talk about not even necessarily just quote unquote children, but just like street kids in general aren't seen as kids. And so like overall, you never really get to see yourself as like a young person, because I hate the word child, to be honest. I'm not even going to go into that, but I really just hate it more and more day by day. But I'm hoping I don't become into like that teacher from the movie Matilda, who like hates kids because she never got to be a kid. I hope I don't like end up like that. I always worried about that, to be honest, and just becoming cold-hearted in general. But anyhow, like, you never get to see yourself as a kid. You always have to see yourself as a little 45-year-old woman or man or whatever. And I feel like especially once you get out here, even though street kids aren't seen as kids, so you're either being told you're a grown ASS woman or man, even though you're not, or you're still maybe gonna go through the whole "you're a child, go home" thing. But either way, especially like when it comes to the whole people aging you up to make themselves feel better about different things, that's like a big thing. But it's like, I feel like for me especially, like I only recently realized that I'm a quote unquote kid, and that's been one of the most screwed up things about all of it. But it's really funny because it's like, I don't know, I think maybe like getting out the abuse situation, which helped me to like get over like the sexual addiction, also helped, because like as I mentioned before in some other video, people don't talk about how like being like having paraphilias and being hypersexual and having sex addiction from like a toddler on up and stuff like that takes away the fake idea of childhood innocence, and it makes you never have it in the first place, when it's really just about non-existent. It's really like I feel like it's mostly a myth, but you never get to have any sense of that. And so like it makes you feel even more like you're just a little grown up than the abuse situation itself already makes you feel, if that even made sense. And I'm trying to think about what else to say with that. Oh yeah, but like it makes me think about this meme I seen in some CPTSD group, I think, where like it was a little kid like wearing a cape by a swing set at the park, and they were like, how you feel when you're in your abuse situation, or how you feel when you're young in your abuse situation, versus how you feel like once you get out your abuse situation, or when you're older in your abuse situation. And that really is how it goes, because it's like after a while you start to regress, and like people act like you have to start regressing like decades on down the line, but that's really not true. Like I was already pretty developmentally delayed, but I was already saying, even in the abuse evidence channels, that like especially in that little 3 months of school I went, well, nah, I don't even know if I could count that, but I mean, yeah, I did definitely feel it there as well, that like, I don't know, I just knew my life was over before 10, and that like I was never really gonna fit in. But that could even go into a video I was supposed to make about like it was gonna be titled, "Are you a pervert or do you just have really bad social skills or both?" Which kind of makes me think about how in that last video where I went over the whole thing with this boy trying to like pretty much make me like a side piece backup. What do they call it? A back burner? A back burner side piece, something like that. And he wanted me to like go to MC with money I don't have for him to just use me, I'm sure, because of his own like trauma symptoms and stuff like that. But still, just like I was supposed to mention in that video how one of the things that keeps coming back up in my head though is like I already know that I get nervous around people my age. I have multiple personalities anyways, which makes it worse. My social skills are like worse with them, and like I just was never good at talking to them, to be honest. Although like day by day I get older, and what I consider people my age are after a while no longer my age, but that's like another thing I guess. Or like I don't know if that even made sense, but that's really just how it is. And like I miss more developmental milestones day by day, but I feel like I'm already too behind to even worry about that at this point. I've been too behind since really 10 to worry about that. And I think like one of the things about it is that there's just a certain way I am, and I'm probably going to be mostly like alone anyways, because I'm just like weird and messed up in the head. But it's whatever though. But one of the things about it that which is the point that I'm getting at with that, is that like I may feel like I'm missing out on like quote unquote kid woman stuff. I don't even know what in the world I'm supposed to be. But well, yeah, I mean I have been a woman since like 8, 12, whatever anyway. So but even though I feel like I'm missing out on that, and like I wish I could like go to the movies or like have like sleepovers, I guess. I don't know. Like would it even be, is it even called a sleepover anymore? I don't even know what in the world. Have sleepovers, go to movies, or like what's the other thing? Have somebody to play video games with me. And like even especially since 14, I've always had like the inner child voice in my head, or not even in my head really, in like my soul, like really like in my stomach, 'cause that's where the soul is. That's where the soul's at anyways. And it's always like nobody wants to play with me because I'm not a good kid, or nobody wants to dog me because I'm not a good kid. But honestly, it's like I don't know why, especially since being out here, and even in some of the last little parts before running away, I've had this fake idea going in my head that I've ever like been good at making friends. I'm pretty much just like how my parents are, which is, I mean, like when you live in the false self and you get too deep into that and the demonization, you can't really like have friends anyways, because like you're too focused on like the the prostitution orgy ritual in the spirit realm that we call dating, and you're also too focused on abusing kids. Like I even remember that bullcrap counselor that I had that kept saying that she was gonna call CPS whenever she would hear like me or my siblings getting beat up during the phone calls, and she didn't, and all that stuff. And my mom had cursed her out and told her not to talk to me anymore. That whole situation, because my mom thought that they called CPS, but they didn't. I remember that counselor was like, it makes sense that your mom and her boyfriend wouldn't have any friends because they're probably worried about friends like calling them out on their abuse. Honestly, it's not even really about that. It's just like a certain level of trauma and attachment issues, and it's just like it's easier for people to find a boyfriend or girlfriend than like a friend, because everybody wants to like do this sleep around stuff, but people don't really want real stuff that doesn't just revolve around objectification and using people. And I mean, you can use friends too, but people don't even really want to do that anymore. I don't know. But like, yeah, so anywho, I don't know why like I had this idea that I'm like missing out on a life I know I would never get to live anyways. Like I get really mad when I see these like news videos and articles about that mostly sound like anti-immigrant like propaganda. It doesn't sound like it's real situations, especially the recent one with like the 24-year-old dude who said he was 16 and said that like he came across the border, supposedly some white people, like some rich white people, let him into their house. That sounds like bullcrap. People aren't gonna let a homeless person, especially a homeless like kid, into their house, typically. But anyhow, when I see situations like that where people like enroll themselves in high school and like to say that they're younger than they really are, it honestly is just annoying because it's like, why is it that people like people who are in the age range for going to high school who really want to go can't enroll themselves without a parent even at 18, but then you have these stories of like these 29-year-olds and stuff enrolling themselves in high school. How? Like you won't even let actual kids quote unquote enroll themselves in high school. So like, how do you have like people that are darn near 30 enrolling themselves in high school when you won't even let an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old enroll themselves in high school? That doesn't really make sense to me. And I get jealous every time, and it's like, well, crap, they're just doing what we all were thinking, but they were brave enough to do it. But it's like, you got to do it without getting caught. Because, like, I remember the little 3 months of school I went to, and, like, there was this one girl who, like, sat on my lap, or I sat on her lap, or maybe it was both of those things, and it's like, dang it. Like, if only, I was really chronically ill by then anyways, but it's like, if only I could have just got 3 more months. Just 3 more months. And I wasn't chronically ill, and I wasn't, like, severely underweight and falling asleep standing up. Like, things could have been maybe a little different, but it's like, I mean, by that point in time, I was usually asleep or crying, so I didn't really do that much talking. But it's still just really sucky. But I mean, I know at the end of the day, I'm lying to myself when I tell myself that even, like, if I was around people my age now, that I would have a chance. Because, like, I mean, there was, well, nah, I may start oversharing, but I mean, that's kind of a long story to even talk about in this video. With the whole, that girl that I already made, like, 3 videos about anyways. But I'm not even going to go into that again, actually. So, I'm trying to think about what else. Oh, yeah, and then another thing we're running away. Still revolving around mostly the same thing with, like, the mindset change. Actually, no. This is important before that other thing. One of the things with the 18 obsession and the minor crisis, but especially the 18 obsession, is that so many people's lives revolve around trying to, like, hide. Well, I mean, especially once you run away, if you're a missing person at least, and even if you're not really, trying to hide and lay low till 18 and not get sent back to your abuse and locked up and all that. And just generally, even if you don't leave your abuse situation, trying to, like, survive till 18 to be able to leave legally, as if there's really any difference other than the fact that you're not supposed to be able to be reported missing. Other than that, there is no difference and nothing really changes. But it's like, you're made to feel like turning 18 is like the end all be all, to the point where you kind of forget that you actually get older after that, and that life goes on, and that eventually you're going to be older than 18. That's also really funny. That's not talked about either, especially when it comes to, like, running away. I feel like it's also a weird thing because it's like, street kids already aren't seen as kids no matter how young you are. What else is it? It was something else with that. And then, oh yeah, hold up. Oh crap, wait a minute. Oh yeah, and then, like, with the foster kid thing, like I've talked about before, I've met foster kids who had told me they just turned 20 and they're just now learning to do basic hygiene and to brush their teeth and shower. When I was on the West Coast, honestly, there's a lot of people like that, but I know one girl comes to mind specifically. And then when it comes to, like, being a runaway or kicked out, I mean, it's like, street kids are already held to, like, a higher standard for whatever reason. And I think, like, one of the big things about it is that you're in everybody's face, but also people feel like if you're, like, a kid and you're already in, like, what they consider a really bad situation, even though it's not worse than your previous situation. But since they see it like that, since people see, like, homelessness as, like, a rock bottom for some reason, they feel like, well, if you're a kid and you're already in this situation, you need to not focus on doing normal kid things. Even if you, like, are one of the people that, like, gets kicked out or runs where you're in CPS custody and you actually are good at making friends. So, like, even if you're somebody who, like, you have friends and they're, like, sitting at home playing Roblox or, like, working their first job and then, like, going to the movies and stuff, you're held to a higher standard. So people feel like, well, screw all that normal stuff that you should be doing. You need to do what I feel like you need to do because I feel like you're a lazy bum. And so I feel like this is even more problematic though when it's like when this narrative is pushed on people that aren't even old enough to work, but then also like it's hard to get people to hire you, especially if they know especially if they know that you're homeless. But then also it's like one of the things with employers, which this can be worse depending on like racial stuff, is that like people feel like, okay, so if you're 16 or 17 or 15, 18, 19 or whatever, and you're already homeless, well, did you even go to school? That's how like some people feel as well. So yeah, there's that. Then that'll make them feel some type of way about you. But what was I saying with that? Oh yeah, so people are gonna have their opinions because they're already in everybody's face. And so then the other thing with that was, yeah, I don't remember what I was talking about, but that's the typical brain fog. So I guess I can go to the next thing. I may remember, I may not, but I'm just gonna go to the next thing. So what was it? Oh yeah. So I've talked about before how like people watching and just staring off into space due to like trauma and maladaptive daydreaming and just like dissociation or general DPDR is like a big thing in the homeless community. It's a big thing in the traumatized people community as a whole. And so like once you're out here and you're not like in constant torture, you have more time to think about like other things. Like I even remember there was this one lady, that lady who turned me into the police, long story, when I tried to run away the first time in 2022. She had seen my abuse evidence videos because I showed them to her. I showed her some of them, or whichever one she ended up watching, I guess. And she was like, she said what a couple other people said, which is that I'm pretty much just like talking in circles in some videos, trying to just figure things out and figure out how to save myself and fix my situation, pretty much. And it's like, in the videos, like, everything is pretty much just about me focusing on getting out, but it's like, since running away, like, now I have time to think about other things, but more so recently, and when I say recently, I mean actually recently, since coming back to the South. I would say when I was in California, I just felt like the police were called on me too much, and it was just like, I don't know what it was, but it was just like a lot of stuff would be in there, and I just still really wasn't stable, and I still couldn't like focus on things that I'm focused on now. Like, I mean, I always wanted to like write books and try to learn to code, but I couldn't do that then. Like, I know that there was I don't know what I was about to say with that, but I didn't have the time or like the energy. My health was like worse there for different reasons. I'm not really sure why my health is like, it seems to be worse when I'm on the West Coast, but I think that like, even though there's better transportation, the amount of walking I'm doing with like the type of health issues I have makes stuff worse with dysautonomia and blood sugar issues and just getting tired and falling asleep. And then like especially in Santa Cruz, even in Oregon as well, like a lot of people are vegans. They want you to eat this vegan food, but it's like I can't eat pasta. When I eat pasta and like noodles and stuff, my blood sugar spikes and my vision goes blurry for days and I can't even see. So yeah, my health was worse there. I was always having the police call on me for different excuses that people would make up, and I couldn't like just be calm and focus on doing the things that I've been able to focus on within the past couple of months, but especially since even November of last year. When it got cold though, things got really hectic. And I think that's also another part of it. Like, I hate the heat. I've never liked being in the heat, but like being when it's too hot, that's bad. When it's too cold, that's bad. And both of those things just aren't good. But it's like wait a minute. Nothing tells you that you don't matter more, that nobody gives a crap about you more than like being in below freezing weather. And it wasn't snowing when I was in the West Coast, but in some places, like when I was in New York and even North Carolina, it was. And it's like, you just can't focus on like other important things when you're like in survival mode. Like, I did a lot of giving away money and just having to spend money that I really didn't want to spend because like I had to like have like a room or something to try to not freeze to death for as long as possible in a place that I really shouldn't have went to anyways. I don't even know what I was thinking there, It's just like stuff like that, just these weird like survival mode decisions just aren't good. Which actually makes me think about something else. I saw this video where this lady was talking about something that I realized, I could say, if not some months ago, well, if not 6 months ago, then sometime last year, since coming back to the South. Although I'm in a place that I never lived in before in the South. So it's not like, it's better than even my usual places, which are also much colder. But anywho, well, much colder and like also no resources, but I mean, well, now if I go into that, I'll be somewhere else. So anyhow, anyways, like, okay, so the lady was like, I don't even really remember the exact quote. I'll put the video in the description when I find it. But to summarize, she was like, having money and like something about taking care of yourself and financial freedom is a blessing because like it means that you don't have to stay in unsafe situations. Well, this depends on your age, but you don't have to stay in unsafe situations just to like have a place to stay or have basic needs met, because like you can financially wait a minute, you're financially able to get yourself out the situation, and like you're able to eat. And to make a long story short, like being broke too long causes more trauma than you like would have had if you weren't. That's like a summary. And like something that I realized when it comes to like going into my villain arc is that a lot of people, especially people that are considered like empaths or chosen ones, are made to have these mindsets that are honestly, they're kind of stupid. I mean, yeah, if you're going to live off the grid and you're going to be actually self-sustainable, then you can have that mindset. But like I started saying a year ago, maybe even longer ago, but I know especially a year ago, you really can't straddle the fence. You're either going to live in the matrix or you're not. You can't be like straddling the fence, trying to live on welfare with 19 kids and stuff like that. That's not, you're going to end up a Jezebel with who's like that brace with SpongeBob, and 1 minute you're beating your kids and talking about how you don't need a man, or you knew all women were hoes and stuff like that. That's not gonna work. You really can't straddle the fence. It's gonna cause more trauma and more issues, and that's aside from the family trauma. That's another reason that people typically become Jezebelic, what I like to call schizonarcs. Anyhow, which I know that I'm on the path of becoming, unless like I figure something out and I do something outside the box. But anyhow, like a lot of people, they're made to have these, well, some people are made to have these mindsets of like, I don't care about money, and like if I had $1,000,000 I would give it all away. Honestly, that's not true, and if that is true, then you're stupid. That's one thing that I actually realized, that like these mindsets actually aren't good mindsets. I even remember when somebody told me that like any other people, especially like grown people that are asking me for money, are selfish. And I remember when I was in New York, this one dude was like, you have a southern accent, you're doing southern hospitality, you don't want to come off as too nice. Pretty much like he was this kid was a human trafficking victim, and he was trafficked for like a lot of his life as a runaway or kicked out kid or something like that in LA before he had went to the East Coast, and like he was forced to like recruit other kids into trafficking, and he thought that either I was being trafficked or I was at risk of ending up in trafficking. And so he was just like telling me all these different things because he was like worried for me. But anywho, yeah, so he said all that stuff. And I was like helping other people that I really shouldn't have been. And like, I definitely wish I would have saved that money, but it's like, it's too late to think back on. But I don't really regret that too much. I would more so say I regret like the different scammy stuff that I got into, like these spiritual groups and stuff. I regret giving money to them, but really not the people in like New York and other places. And luckily, I haven't given money to anybody in a year plus. I haven't even had anybody ask me for money in a long time. Well, no, there was this one white dude like a little while ago that would ask me for money pretty often, and of course I would just say I don't have any, and I typically really didn't. But I haven't seen him in like a hot minute anyway. So, but yeah. And it's like, I do wonder though, especially like even with the video I wanted to make that's going to be titled Did I Become an Atheist, quote unquote. I guess as I could maybe, well, I can't even really say atheist, but did I I guess I'll just title it still anyways, that I've become an atheist in 6 months. I do wonder though, like, am I maybe actually finally going through puberty, or am I am I maybe finally like maturing, or am I just like getting more traumatized and that's changing my mindset? Because it could be either one of the two, really, or maybe it could be both put together. Maybe I'm finally going through puberty somewhat 2%, and I'm maturing due to that, like my mindset for certain things, or just due to still being in a not ideal situation. I'm just like gaining more trauma, or maybe not even really trauma. I don't even really like that term in this like situation, but just like having more mindset shifts that I needed to have. Cause like there's definitely certain mindsets that you have to try to like survive your abuse situation. And it's like, I mean, yeah, my current situation is still pretty like, it just feels like being like abused and neglected by society, especially like due to like the bullying and stuff that I get. But like overall, it's still different from my previous situation. It's not anywhere near as bad, of course. So it's still kind of like I don't know what I was about to say, not gonna lie. But yeah, you just have to have certain mindsets to like survive in the abuse that you may not need, like once you get out, depending on what your situation is when you get out. And if you get out into like a safe environment, things can be completely different. Like if I because like I always say, I watch documentaries about street kids and tunnel people and the Las Vegas, or is it Nevada? No, I think Las Vegas is Nevada, right? Isn't it Las? I don't even know. But the tunnel people, the sewer people, the mole people, the Romanian mole people, different documentaries like that about homelessness and stuff, pretty much, and like orphans and all that. And I liked watching stuff like that since I was 6, but more so 7, because that's when I started watching YouTube. And it's like I've always pieced together the fact that most people become like homeless when they're young, when they're like a kid, and then they get stuck. And generally, it's a family issue. And so it's like there definitely is a difference between people that run away or get kicked out and have a place to go that's actually like safe and decent, versus those who like just have to go like hide in the woods somewhere and hide from the police, or even if they're not reported missing, they still like even if they leave at 18 plus, there's just a difference in like having a place to go and not having a place to go, because still you're more likely to get stuck homeless due to many different reasons than continuous trauma and poor treatment, and lose your mind or end up in jail for being homeless or for having to like dumpster dive or steal food or whatever. And so the thing with that is that like I do wonder like if I did have a safe place to like go, like like an adoption type situation or something else. Well, not really an adoption type situation. Like even if I was like in the West Coast and I was like going to the overnight youth shelter, that's still like a homeless situation and lots of trauma and stuff. So specifically like a safe, like makeshift family type situation, would I like be having the mindsets and the new ways of thinking and ideas that I'm getting on a daily basis still, if I was like in a decent situation, I was like living with like some safe people or whatever? I do wonder about that. And then another thing with that is as I always say though, other than like the change in like the money mindset, which I kind of started to have before running anyways, because like I was trying really really hard to like do print on demand, which I was calling drop shipping on accident up until recently, to like make money even before leaving. Cause like, okay, so initially before leaving I had this idea. I was going to try to make money before running away, and then I was going to try to get a job to work under the table after running away. And I was going to save up that money, and I was going to keep saving, and then once I was 18, I was going to get an apartment. That was my original goal. And not going to go into like that too much, but that's another thing that I could consider magical thinking at this point. because it's like, I really see that, now I see that just like the whole, once I get out of my situation, I'm going to be able to start making friends thing that I kind of somewhat stated in that video I re-uploaded from 2022 or 2023. I think it was the one titled Fear is What's Holding Me Back, but it may have been the one titled Getting Out is the Only Thing That Matters, which I may have re-uploaded that before another time as well, like a year or so ago. But anyhow, yeah, I see that the same at this point. But it's like, it's just like things can go really different. Like, as I've said before, 2 years ago or something in some video or a couple videos, I definitely feel like once people get out here and they like see the freedom, but they also see the stuckness and the loss of hope over time, and their like their hopes and dreams and their expectations and what they want for their self decreases over time more than it already, well, the same or more than it already did in their abuse situation. They start to like just get used to being out here and convince themselves they like it because they really don't have a choice anyways. But like for people that have somewhere to go and they don't get the sense of like the outdoor life and this idea that like, well, there's a way that I can survive outside where like I don't have to like figure out how to scrape up money to get a place to stay. And even at an age where where most people are living with their parents anyways or something, it's like, I don't know if this is even coming out right, but it's like, once you get a sense that there's like another way to live because you got put in that predicament due to having no options, you can get stuck in that, even maybe possibly if you do have a choice, because you just get so used to it, like it. And then it's like, I didn't like consider myself homeless. I never understood even the point of calling somebody who couldn't get a place homeless anyways. But it's like, once you have people tell you that you're homeless and you're a bum and stuff enough, even once you have like a place to stay, it's hard to like get over the quote unquote identity of being homeless. Like how you'll probably never get over the identity of being the weird outcast because you probably always will be. And like there's even this one dude who had left a comment on some Reddit post, and he was like, I've been housed for 10 years and I still can't shake off my homeless identity. And 10 years is a long time to be housed and to still like see yourself as homeless. But it goes back to the whole thing that I always say, there's homeless energy, which is orphan energy. When people sense that you're homeless, they're really just sensing that you're traumatized and you don't have parents or a family. But that can still depend, because like it depends on people are used to what people want to believe as well. Because like I said, other than the people that like go by my sleeping spot and see me sleeping outside, people generally don't believe that, they don't believe I'm homeless, and then other people just don't expect me to be homeless because I'm like young. Like even like the shelter staff, for whatever reason, believe that I have a place to stay, that I'm just like a lot of other people that just go there to like either eat or just hang around for some reason. Which, I mean, maybe for like the predatory pimps and trafficker dudes that go around there, but for me personally, if I had a place to stay, I really would have no business being there getting fondled and sexually harassed all day. I don't even know why I would go, like other than maybe for food, due to like the fact that most people that live indoors have food insecurity. But even most of them wouldn't want to go to like a soup kitchen because they feel like it's not for them, or some pride issue and being embarrassed and stuff like that. Like crap. I still remember that whole thing where that lady tried to tell me that if I had a place to stay and I was staying with somebody, I wouldn't be at a church. I wouldn't miss the last bus back to my spot because of being at a church getting dinner. And it's like, I wish I would have been able to go to places like that to eat food before running away, because maybe that would have helped me to not get as sick as I did from all the iatrogenic and other side stuff, as well as the starvation. It's like if I could have went to something like that, these like church dinners or soup kitchens pretty much, I probably would have been in a better predicament throughout my life, and I would be in a better health predicament probably even now. and I maybe would have not became chronically ill, at least to a certain extent. But yeah, so that was a really bullcrap comment. And I also think back to that lady when she said the only person you can blame for how you're feeling right now is yourself, because she was always projecting her feelings about her housing situation and her family trauma situation onto me, and was always trying to make me feel like I wanted to unalive myself even before it really started to creep back in, which was since leaving the West Coast. But I mean, I don't know, I kind of always did to a certain extent since even really before 10. So not that I don't know, it's worse sometimes than others, but anyhow, she was projecting her emotions onto me and telling me the only person I could blame for how I'm feeling right now is myself, because I won't just move in with somebody don't know who I'm supposed to move in with. And that's bullcrap, and assuming that I feel a certain type of way. But she's not really wrong, because it's like if I would have just killed myself before 10 instead of worrying about the age of accountability and hell and all that stuff, then I definitely wouldn't have had to feel a lot of ways. So she's not wrong, I guess. And then, as I mentioned before, and I even had someone tell me recently who's currently being trafficked by CPS and all that stuff, they didn't expect to live to the age that they're at now. And I know I've been mentioning for the past, since at least last year, that me and a lot of people I know are really struggling as we get older. Really, even by well, crap. One of the people that comes to mind was kind of already in well, no, I guess that's not mid-teen. So anywho, by teen years, pretty much. Especially once you get closer to your mid-teen years. If you're somebody who is already expecting to have to unalive yourself, or to have been unalived by your abusive parent or whatever, or to have passed away from being drugged or whatever with your abuse situation, when you realize that you're getting older and you're still alive, and eventually you're almost at an age where or maybe if you're a street kid, no matter how young you are, people are going to be telling you, well, you should be doing this and you should have this by now, you should have learned how to drive and different stuff like that, you should have had a 3-bedroom and stuff like that. It gets scarier. But also one of the things that makes it scarier, that doesn't even have anything to do with societal matrix expectations, is that if you were expecting to be dead and you're still alive, you don't have to think about, okay, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do for my future? Am I gonna be rocking back and forth behind Walmart talking to a stuffed animal at 75 and stuff like that? I always worried since I was really young of I worried about being this elderly lady who lived in a house full of pretty much like Mary Shaw, that horror movie Dead Silence. I worried about that. I know when I was 12, this one girl told me that I was going to be luring kids into a van with candy when I'm elderly, which, I mean, I've been feeling elderly since 14 anyway, so I don't know, which is when my midlife crisis started. And then, what else was it? I'm trying to think. I don't know, I just wish there was a way for more people who are about to be kicked out, or who are runaways or needed to be runaways, to see this video. And even I just wish there was actual harm reduction. As I've said before, I really want to make even more videos about the whole running away thing, because for one, I mean, of course I mentioned being kicked out and being in CPS custody, but I can only speak on that so much because those aren't my experiences. But I do see that people who are kicked out, they really weren't expecting it and they really want to go back home, which actually makes you think about something else I can bring up that goes in the whole thing of people not knowing what they deserve, and people just being used to being neglected and abused and treated like crap and left to die pretty much. I really think back to when I was in Oregon, and there was this girl who had just got kicked out 6 days before we met at a McDonald's by the youth shelter. although she lived in Washington, but due to the public transportation was pretty easy for her to like get there. And even though she was 19, her school still like had programs where like even at that age she could go like back to Washington and go to like after school clubs and stuff like that. And it's like crap. It's like I wish I had something like that, but I'm not gonna go into that because I'm making it about me again. So anyhow, I remember like she would like just be horrified and like she would be really scared when like people who were on drugs or just had whatever going on would like run up to us and start talking weird. Like in fact, I remember there was this one Jamaican dude or something like that that had walked up to us, and there was this other girl there too. Well, most of everybody was transgender, so I don't know. There was this other girl or boy something there, and this dude walked up to us and he started singing about how the suffering of the children of America living on the streets pretty much, which is really interesting. He was definitely drunk. He had just left this like sports event thing that happened at this stadium type thing. I don't even know what sport it was. I don't know if it was like football or what. And then after he sung to us for like some minutes, he tried to get us to go back to his apartment. Then there was this other situation where that girl was like with me, and some dude had ran up like screaming, and then he like passed out on the sidewalk, and he didn't get back up for like an hour or something, and we were sitting there waiting for the youth shelter to open because we couldn't go in until like either 8:40 or 9:40 p.m. and then we have to leave at 8 a.m. And I was like, why can't we just stay 24 hours? Why do we gotta leave at 8 a.m.? Why can't we leave at least like 10 a.m.? And then somebody was like, well, some people are still in high school and stuff, so. And then, what else was it? Oh, yeah, and then, like, if you leave 1 minute late, you're banned for a night. If you leave 2 minutes late, you're banned for 2 nights. It was really strict rules there, and it was really bullcrap, and, like, a lot of the staff were trans, too, and I remember this lady had even reported one of the male staff who was trans because, she was, like, he was he had like he was on the hormones, and so he had breasts, but like he had on no bra and a see-through shirt, and she was like, yeah, I reported her because we can't have our tits out in front of kids. And it's like there was just a lot of mess with all that stuff. Anywho, this girl was always talking about she can't live the rest of her life like this, and her parents were texting her saying, yeah, we know you're mad. And she was like, of course I'm mad, you kicked me out of the one home I knew. And she said it was because of like differences in like the generations. I think she just got kicked out because she had a girlfriend, to be honest, but it's still screwed up either way. And then it was something else with that. I'm trying to remember. She did have supportive teachers, so that like would talk to her about being kicked out. I do think she was eventually let back in her house though, because like the last time I went back to Oregon, I didn't see her, but I'm pretty like emotionally detached, so like I was pretty distant as always, but it was just a sad situation, and like I remember how like she felt versus how everybody else felt. Like I'm already pretty detached, and I know like being out here is better than being in my abuse situation, but everybody else, literally everybody else was foster kids. They had been stolen from their parents, or they never knew their parents in the first place, and stuff like that. So it's like the way she felt about the situation was different from how everybody else felt about the situation, and she was just always talking about how scared she was and how like she was scared to sleep outside, she was scared to walk around by herself. This just couldn't be the rest of her life, while everybody else was just like living their normal, usual, everyday life, and they were just used to it. And so was something else with that. Oh yeah, and then she was worried about like the drug use, and she was talking about like how Oregon let their homeless issue get bad and how Washington was nicer and there was less like drug issues and stuff like that, which goes into what I call which I originally called it the West Coast projection, but now I just call it the Caucasian addict projection, but I'm not going to go into that here. And she said something else. Oh yeah, and like I remember how the McDonald's owner was like being rude to me and her, because of course she was used to seeing homeless kids, and like she hadn't even been homeless long enough to really give off homeless energy. But it's like, especially when you're in places like that where they're just so used to seeing homeless kids, like when they see a kid by themselves, they just automatically assume you're homeless pretty much. And then the McDonald's was like right beside the one of the youth shelters anyway, so. But yeah, I remember I used the bathroom there once, and I found out that I was about to go to jail apparently. And that could be its own video, but it was something else with that I could throw in. I guess it kind of makes me think back to like something that I realized when I started researching MK Ultra and all that stuff more so at 7, and especially once I started to like be more honest with myself about my own situation by somewhat 12, but especially 14, when I was like, okay, I gotta stop lying to myself, and I started researching, and I found out like about the term narcissist and stuff like that, although I don't like psych labels and all that. Especially then, I started to like see more and more what I already knew, which is that people live in their own la-la land to be able to go to sleep at night. And even people who are in their own not good situations have cognitive dissonance about it, especially when it comes to like parents and family. Which, I mean, it makes sense because like you really want to have like a place to stay and people to say, people, you want to at least be able to pretend they like that, like you have people that love you and you love somebody. But I don't really think I've really ever loved anybody, but I've been saying that since 10, really, that like I've had limerence obsessions and like romantic obsessions due to like mommy issues and stuff, but I don't think I've ever really loved anybody, and I definitely wouldn't say that anyone's ever really loved me, but I guess it's kind of whatever after a while. Because, like, once you get to a certain point, which I start to think about by, I guess, 12 more so, it's like, if somebody actually did, like, finally really actually like me, I think that, like, I was thinking then, by this point, it wouldn't even matter because it's already, like, done for. And I'm already too far gone and too, like, distant with attachment issues. But anywho, what I was about to say is that, anyhow, people who have had these 1% decent lives, or people with, like, extreme cognitive dissonance, or just a general average person, is never going to see, like, the world for what it really is. And they've had their experiences to where, like, they just couldn't fathom your experience or some other people's experience, and they couldn't fathom being in it, and they just see you as like the traumatized person who sees the world in like a screwed up way. Like, I remember in the early parts of my abuse evidence channels, I used to say things like, people who have these like screwed up mindsets, which I used to call the screwed up mindset, I don't anymore, but people who have these screwed up mindsets, as people call it, who like say things like I'm trying to think of an example, like love isn't real, and moms are evil, parents are evil, which, I mean, I never was against that whole parents are evil, moms are evil thing, but just the things that like people consider having a all or nothing, black and white mindset, or not even really that, they wouldn't even use that term, just like what they would consider people that believe in conspiracies, or people that just think that everybody's quote unquote bad, which really nobody's good. Those are people that like see the world for what it is based off of their experiences and having real life experiences. People try to say that like you've just had too many bad experiences. No, you've had too many real life experiences, and you can't pretend that you live in this fake world that you really don't, like some people do. Like, I've always said, back when I was still calling the cash for kids system and the human cash cow system the mental health system, that people like people and kids who like have safe enough parents to where like they would never end up in these systems don't even believe that they really exist. They feel like you're just making up stuff, or that you're just like maybe the psych patient who is paranoid about the doctor, or they just feel like you're exaggerating whatever situation. I feel like maybe if you're not in the mental health system, but you're in like the juvenile justice system branch of the cash for kids system, people think that you're exaggerating your experience because they don't want to admit that these systems really exist, which is funny because like when people do admit that they exist, they just say, well, you deserved it anyways. People literally like to make jokes about people being turned out and unalive by sodomy rituals in jail, in juvie and prisons. And one of the things about the kids in adult prisons and the kids in juvie is that they're often being essayed by the staff or just the grown people, but in juvie the staff more so than even the other kids really. And then of course that's why these people end up with quote unquote schizo, which really they typically have DID, but you can have both, and there can be similarities, which everybody has a level of DID, and everybody has like splits or multiples from trauma to a certain extent, but for some people it's more evident. And so I guess that was it. Okay, no, the one thing I forgot. So I'm not gonna like really talk about all the screenshots, but one in particular mentions the whole thing of like places to socialize for people 18 or 19 plus. So one of the things about this is that well, I kind of did just mention those minutes ago the whole thing with like the girl who was even at 19 was still able to go to her like after school sports programs and stuff. But of course, stuff like that isn't available to majority of people. And then if you're like someone like me who I mean I wouldn't have had that available anyways because I wasn't like I never lived in like that demographic. But anywho, if you're someone like me, depending on your abuse situation, you haven't been or aren't in school anyways. Now, the community college thing, there's that, but I mean, who in the world, is anybody actually signing up for community college just to, like, have people to talk to? I mean, it makes sense, to be honest. Like, I mean, it can be something to do if you're, like, in a bad situation and you're lonely, but that's if you're able to sign up. And that can depend on things with age and also, like, with homelessness, are you having your basic needs met? Because, like, it's going to be harder to go if you don't even know where you're going to sleep at night and how you're going to get something to eat. Like for me personally, a lot of things are kind of hard because like I guess due to whatever with the dysautonomia, I have like really, really bad hypoglycemia, and it's like I have to be able to eat like a lot for my blood sugar to probably still drop to 50, and then I have to eat certain things to not like have what apparently is called, I think it's postprandial hypotension, where like especially if I eat things with like certain amounts of carbs and certain types of like bread and things like that, I pretty much just like fall asleep right then and there wherever I'm at, stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, but I mean, I guess I can't even really count that because like most people aren't really having like health issues to that severity, but pretty much like if your basic needs have to be met, and like it depends on your health and your living situation and then your age. At least if you're a missing person. If you're not a missing person, you could probably like get you could enroll in a community college, but you still have to have your vital records. But depending on where you're at, like if you're not in somewhere like, I don't know, California, like, and you're somewhere where they're not used to homeless youth, you're gonna get treated funny and they're gonna like act weird towards you because they're not used to seeing homeless college kids. The ones that were homeless, they didn't know they were homeless pretty much. So there's that. And there's a lot that I could say about that, but anyhow. So to go over the whole thing of the what's called third spaces, I know I made this video like some weeks ago where I put this link in the description, or a couple links actually, to news articles and videos of people talking about the issue of there not being third spaces and how like they all are behind a paywall or they're not safe because of like shootouts and teen takeovers and people in their teens and 20s running into the Church of Scientology, which I don't really know what that really has to do with third spaces, but stuff like that people talk about and bring up that revolves around how places aren't safe, pretty much, which the Church of Scientology isn't safe anyways. But people mention that when it comes to like these topics. It even makes me think back to how, like, when I was in New York, I know at least in the Bronx, which I guess maybe that isn't New York, or is that a part? I don't even know. But places like that, you can't even like go in certain like fast food places like McDonald's under like 21 plus and stuff like that without a parent because of like ageism due to like how people feel about the issues that they're having with the youth in places like that. Not that I think anybody was using McDonald's as a third space, but that also comes to mind. But to get more to the point, I've mentioned before going into the whole street kids aren't seen as kids, and even the thing of like when you're in certain situations, you're seen as different and people just don't want you around. So like I know I've mentioned how like I'm trying to think of a good example. So like for some programs, for youth programs, there's a lot of issues with it. You need parents' permission, you need a parent to sign you up, you need vital records, you need an address, and or they're not expecting you to be homeless anyways, they're not for homeless youth. And once you're homeless, they don't want you around, even if you're in the age range. Or you're in the age range, but you're not enrolled in school, and they don't want you around because, well, it seems like if you're not enrolled in school, you have something going on anyways with your parents' situation, even if they don't know you're homeless. So they're like, yeah, we don't want you to in our program anyways. Or they'll just say, our grants only cover for people who are enrolled in school to be in our program. Or by the time you're 18 or 17, you're too old. Or by the time you're maybe 16, you're too old. But especially 18 and 17, those two ages especially, you're too old. And issues with finding like youth programs for people that are 16 or younger to 24, but typically 16 to like 24, maybe 14 or 15, because that's like a young man or young woman pretty much. And then that's also transitional age youth. But in places where they like have homeless youth programs that are typically for foster kids, really, or at least that's what they were mostly originally made for, they do have like programs for that, but they revolve around homelessness and like the homeless industrial complex and like using you pretty much. They're not really like typically leisurely or fun, but it depends. So when I know like this one youth research center in like Cali, they would like take us on field trips when they had like the grant money, or like places would like give them like passes to take us places like to some state park type thing, because of course they get money from like the government to allow the youth program to let us go there. So they would do it sometimes. But that's still for like people who are like homeless youth though, like not really like a youth program, because it's like pretty much once you're in like a certain situation, you're shut out of like normal things. It even goes into how, like I always say, not even just so nobody wants the homeless kid around their kid thing, but even more so like how do I put it? Like pretty much nobody wants the like lost cause, castaway, orphan, traumatized person, as if the other kids aren't traumatized as well by their parents. Nobody wants that person like around. One, it brings a lot of guilt and shame because they feel like they should be doing more to help you. Two, they feel like it's like an extra burden, and you're just seen as like different and like more grown or messed up than you really are, maybe. Like even when it comes to like, in fact, I meant to talk about this like in my first 1 hour plus section of this in the beginning, but I forgot. I forgot to mention the whole thing of turning like 16 to 18, or even 17 to like 20 or 21, maybe even. When you're a street kid, especially with the 18 thing, because like more so with guys, it's already a known fact that like people, if the parent already didn't like the friend or the boyfriend, but even just the friend, once they turn 18, even if their kid is 17, they'll like press charges and get them put on the sex offender registry. Because I always talk about how like really the age of consent laws are made against the youth, and they don't benefit them because they're charged in actual abuse situations with actual like grown people. The kid victim is charged for their own abuse and put on the registry. But even in situations like this where like the parent doesn't like the boyfriend or the male friend, the day that they turn 18, the parents press charges and stuff like that. Or even if they're not 18 really, even if they're like still 17, not that that's any different as if there's a difference between 17 and 18 and those different ages. But it's like when you're like a street kid, one of the things with that as well is like, I would say especially this could be an issue if like you're like brown and you're friends with like Caucasian kids or whatever. It could be more risky in a situation like that, or you're dating one and like you turn 18, or maybe you're 17, they're 16, or maybe you're the same age, but like just due to the situation, especially with what's going on now with the minor crisis in the Torontophology, as I call it, just due to stuff like that, you're made to feel like you're so much more older than you really are because you're homeless and because you're quote unquote on your own, as if you weren't on your own while living with your abusers. And so that can cause its own issues that'll make it like harder to like be in normal situations with people your age. Like I really hate this idea that because like a young person is like homeless or whatever, they're supposed to only hang around like these grown people who are serial child molesters and rapists and stuff, who are like pimps and stuff like that, because they're on their own, so they're technically grown, and so they're supposed to like hang around all these people that are decades older than them, that aren't safe, that are stuck in their weird messed up ways and are sexual predators, and that they shouldn't be around people their age because they're like seen as different when they're still like the same age as everybody else. And that's for like if you're somebody, or well, that's more so for if you're somebody who like last really like had friends and talked to people your age before running away or whatever. So that can be pretty iffy. But that's why I would say, like, when I hear stories of people running away from group homes and foster placements together, like 30 plus kids running away from like a foster home, which apparently things like that do happen. That's a lot of people to run away. Like, things like that are actually better because you're together and you're taking care of each other, and you don't have to feel left out, or like you have to like be the 22-year-old or the 16-year-old who's quote unquote friends with like a bunch of horny 40-year-old men and women or something like that. You don't have to feel like that. And that definitely is the difference between like partner seeking when it comes to running away, but I would never advise it because partner seeking typically doesn't work out. You're typically running away with like some random, either secretly grown person who's a trafficker off the internet, or just some kid you may not get along with, who may not even really run, who may want you to like baby them in a system and run away from their own abuse because they're scared to do what they need to do to save themselves. So they want you to micromanage them running away, and they want you to run away and then scrape up money to go all the way to go pick them up, and then scrape up money to go take you guys somewhere else. So it typically doesn't work out, but I still get the actual point behind partner seeking and wanting somebody to run away with you, because like I still think about how like especially people that I know that are still in their like horrible, dangerous situations, and even people that probably died in them. I still think about what it would be like even right now if I would have ran away with somebody and I wasn't like by myself. I probably would still have the video addiction and making videos all day. But yeah, I do think about that. But the third spaces thing is really real. Like I even think about the whole thing with like the library programs. It's like you can go to these library programs for like teens from 13 to 18, but the thing is, I don't really think this would get you caught, but I feel like, well, no, because you need a parent to get a library card when you're under 18. So when you're under 18, even if you're 17, you can't get a library card without at least some older person saying that they're like your parent helping you get it. And you may need an ID, but maybe not. Then, once you turn 18, you may still not have an ID in a SSN and a birth certificate. Or maybe you're in a place that knows you're homeless and they're just not going to want you in the teen programs because they still see you as like so much more grown than you really are, which is going to be worse if they're all quote unquote white and you're not. They're gonna make it seem even worse to make you seem even more dangerous and grown than you really are. Then also, one of the things about the library programs, to be realistic, nobody but like 12-year-olds are really going to those things. And it's mostly like often homeschooled kids with like these Jezebelic upper middle class and rich quote unquote white moms that like isolate them and barely allow them to do anything, and they're like helicopter parents who are overprotective or just really abusive and want to vicariously live through their kids. So they're in these programs or these activities at the library for like teens and stuff because their parents trying to like let them do something while still really not letting them do anything. So my point of saying all that is that like you're not gonna like meet any like young adults who are like 16, 18 in any of those like library activities anyways. Typically, sometimes you will, but that depends. I will say for like the ones 18 plus, like for Dungeons and Dragons or something, if you're like into those like witchcraft games, then yeah, you'll like meet some people, but not really for the other stuff. But I would definitely say that like a big thing will be the expectation that you're in school to be in like some programs, even for 18 plus. Like some of them are for like if you have a high school diploma, and it's just like weird stuff. Like people, I don't know. I just feel like it's really like unfortunate, especially for somebody who already like really lacks social skills and has missed like a lot of developmental milestones, and you want to catch up. And like I've always heard people say since I was really young that like you want to make friends in school because once you're older and you're not in school anymore, you it's impossible to find ways and places to make friends. But that depends on if you ever were like the person who's even the type to be able to make friends anyways, which I never was. But anyhow, even my mom would say that, but it's like it's funny that she would say that while sabotaging me getting to go to school. But anyhow, like it shouldn't be that way, but I mean, just talking to people my age is just like really nerve-wracking. I'm just a nervous wreck. I'm laughing, I'm like rocking side to side, and if they're like pretty or hot or something, then it's worse. It's just like horrible, even in recent times. And it's like now the people my age that I do meet, they're like I meet them because they like work at like the grocery stores and stuff that I go to, because I'm typically there a lot since I'm homeless anyways. Well, not a lot because I don't have money, so I try to not be around stores, but at least at one point when I had a little bit more money saved up and put to the side, I was there more. But that just means that like I'm like meeting people my age, but they're like in different situations and stages of life. So like I'm not like meeting people that I can like play video games with or something, or like go to the movies with. I'm meeting people that are like working all day by choice because they're trying to like start off their woman man life or whatever, or they like have been like this one girl, they've been like working since 14 and younger because their parents are like not that safe, but luckily they were in an abusive situation where they were at least able and allowed to work a job when they weren't sabotaged there. So they're like working all day and all night, and they're like their whole idea of being a kid is just working. And there's that. But it even goes back to that one comment that I mentioned in one of my videos about the whole Billy situation from Software Underbelly, where somebody was like trying to become financially stable at 14 is wild. Honestly, it's really not. It's the fact that somebody can't when they need to. And there definitely is a weird aspect with that of like the discrimination with people like that, and like which type of people are more likely to be hired at that age when they need to be, and which ones like aren't, which could be a whole nother video. But the third space thing is really for real, but I feel like it doesn't even really matter. I'm just like lying to myself because I know that it would just be embarrassing. I just be embarrassing myself the entire time. Like, I even remember in elementary and stuff, people just thought that like I was embarrassing myself on purpose. But one thing that I realized even back then that I would say all the time is that along with the multiple personalities, I act more weird or I guess like stupid around certain people because I don't feel comfortable around them anyways and they're not safe anyhow. And also because like I can't talk to people about the things that I really would want to talk to people about because like knowing more than most people would then still be in developmentally delayed, which is why I'm the type of person that's more likely to end up with like a chomo or something anyways. When you're like considered wise beyond your years but you're still developmentally delayed and traumatized, you're more likely to get with a chomo. Or maybe, depending on the person, you're more likely to be the person getting with younger people. But it can depend, or it can even go both ways. People don't talk about that, but like a kid can like be 16 and get with like a 30-year-old one day, and then get with like a 12-year-old the next. Which I talk about stuff like that in my hypothetically paraphilia playlist. Maybe even in my Gerontophilogender playlist, but I know specifically in my hypothetically paraphilia playlist I talk about stuff like that.